Welcome back. So right now we've hard-coded the course planner 2 inside the title, inside the top toolbar component. Let's just play around with us wanting to actually be able to set this from the outside when I create the component. So actually let's say that I want to be able to set it when I create a CP top toolbar. I want to be able to set the actual title inside that button from here instead of having to hard-code it inside the top toolbar component TS. You can use something called add input, and now it asks me to actually add this input here, and all it does, if I just ask it to autocomplete it for me, control space, double click here, is it adds this guy, the input, which is pulled in from the Angular core module in here. Now we can actually add input from the outside. Now the input has to be a string, so I'm kind of defining here how an input looks like. That's kind of the goal of this guy now. Okay, so now it knows the input is a string. Let's just end it, semicolon. There we go. So now we can put an input from somewhere else. And this is kind of where the square brackets come to play. So let's try and go into our app HTML here and look at the CP top toolbar that we made earlier. So if we go in here now, we can actually put in a title like this and set it to something from in here. And let's just try and say CP2. That's a new name. But remember, when it's inside this, we have to put in a double, you have to have the single quotation in there as well. Let's try and save this and see if it calls our new application CP2 now. So now it's CP2, okay? So notice what happened is, I'm going from, let me just zoom in here. I'm actually going from my app component HTML file where I have this selector here, and now I can from the outside start putting information in here. Pretty awesome, right? So that means that now when I create a CP top toolbar, I can start defining how it should look. I could add specific buttons, I could add specific action links, we'll do that later, and I can actually control now something about the CP top toolbar from directly within the app component. And that's because I add this new add input area right here and said the title is just a string. You don't have to define it, but whenever you create this guy, you can define it to something from the outside now. Pretty amazing. Let's just play around with this a bit more. First of all, let's try and zoom out and let's try and look at the documentation on how you can use an input field and an ngModel. So now we're touching on two topics here. So I'm going into the cheat sheet and let me just look for a model in here. Maybe there's some help. Model. There we go. So this is how we can make an input field with an ngModel of username. Let's try and grab that one. And this is going to be a two-way binded model. We'll talk more about that later, but let's just, for now, just accept it, right? And instead of username, I want to call it toolbar title, like this. Now, unresolved type of toolbar title, I'll put that up here now, like this. And again, we have the value is not available inside the TS file, so I'm going into the app component TS file, and I'm going to create this toolbar title, and let's just start out by making it equal some simple string like course planner 2, like this. Save that, and let's see if it accepts it now in here. There we go. Now it knows it's the toolbar title. Let's see what happened now. Let's see what happened now. Going back to my beautiful page here. Now it says, notice here it says course planner 2. Okay, let's try and change that. Look, it's changing in the title as well. So now I can call it CP2. Now, this is of course not something I would do, but I just want to show you how easy it is to manipulate the data between the different components. So this is actually its own component, right? It's getting information from an input field that's stored inside an ngModel here and then passes it on. So this is almost magic. So we have an input field here, right? It has the same name as the title we're sending in. So this is kind of a property inside our app component TS file, this guy right here. Now that property is going to be set to something up front, and then inside the HTML here, the input field will be populated with that value when the page is refreshed. That value will then be sent both here and here, meaning that inside the toolbar component, it'll be passed in as the title, and then it will be shown in the HTML in the toolbar because we said we wanted to present the title right here inside our button. Right? It's pretty amazing. how this works again. We'll dive more into this, but I just want to show you, so don't worry about it. Play around with it if you want to. If not, get ready for it later.